Hello, how are you all doing today? It's me, Connie, from Gliding Through Blindness, and I have an exciting topic today. I haven't talked about Neuralink for a while, but there has recently been an excited update that I just had to tell you all about. Um, Before I do, I'll just quickly mention the recent video I did a few days ago about hospital tips and tricks for people, especially who are visually impaired. But I'm sure there's things in there that might be helpful for anyone. And I was focusing also on people who are visiting their loved one for a prolonged period of time, like not just for a few, like a day or two, but for potentially weeks or even longer. And I talked about my own personal experience caring for my mom a few years ago, and just some of the things that I learned. So hopefully, some of you will find that helpful. And it's what I'm going to tell you about today is Neuralink's third patient. The first one, Noland Arbor, I think is how you pronounce his last name, but he is a quadriplegic. And then there was another patient, Alec. I can't remember his last name. He's not as much in the limelight. He's probably just not wanting to be as much in the public eye because, of course, that's not a requirement for people that sign up for the Neuralink trials, clinical trials that they're conducting right now. Um, So I did a Neuralink video. It was one of my very first videos. And I just talked about what it would be like to gain my sight. So that was really kind of the focus of that particular video, more than just the company itself. I was just thinking more about me in particular and blind people in particular, like some of the, like it might not be all like what we think it, to have our sight back, but I personally would choose it if, like, once I knew it was safe and that it would be significant, a good change. But I'm sure there would be some adjustments too, and I talked about some of that. But um, the Neuralink company, for those of you that don't know, um, is doing computer interface, or BCI, which they actually put little wires in your brain, or electrodes, or I'm sure I'm going to get some of these terms wrong. Um, but um, I'm going to put my glasses on here, I think. It's been a while since I showed you all my glasses. Because usually I'm either recording with them or I'm um, just not wearing them, and so you got all don't get to see them very much, but that's kind of one of the icons of this channel. I know I was wearing them in my profile picture because it's a big part of why I'm a YouTuber and what is making my job as a blind person um, who is doing a lot of videos on YouTube. A lot of that is due to the glasses. And that is what is one of the things that convinced me to begin my channel, is because of all these emerging technologies, and the glasses were definitely one of them. I think I had a different pair of glasses when I first made my picture, but anyway, so yeah, they have allowed me to record videos, and it is what gave me the initial confidence that I could in fact be a YouTuber. So I haven't showed them to you for a while, so here they are. And anyway, sorry that I kind of went off on a rabbit trail there, but if you know me at all, if you've been watched any of my videos, that's just kind of something you will have to get used to, but I try to keep it focused for the most part and on track or whatever. But anyway, so Neuralink wants to help people with all kinds of disabilities. Right now, they're just focusing on, like I said, the like people who are paralyzed or have a very severe, like they can't move at all, and but eventually they want to. They already have this blind sight program started, although they said that at first it won't be a big change. Of course, if you're totally blind, it might, I mean, it would be a lot compared to what you have, which is nothing. But they're saying that even if you don't have any, had never had any eyesight, and even if you don't have any eyes, this BCI can still tap into your visual cortex and give you perfect vision eventually, and even better than perfect, like better than 2020 eventually. But I'm not necessarily waiting for that, but I don't think I want to be one of the first ones either, because I want to get maximum benefit. And I'm not sure if, like, these initial patients would be able to get theirs updated. So I would want to be sure about that first to make sure that I would be able to improve it over time, and that I wouldn't just have to um get what I like. Noland was saying that he doesn't think, anyway, from what I remember him saying, that his won't be able to be improved that drastically, like compared to all the people that will come after him, as the company just learns more. And so anyway, it's just really exciting times. And then eventually their goal is for, like, anyone to be able to get Neuralink, to have like superhuman powers, and that's kind of like a whole different topic in a way. But it's, they're thinking that that might be the only thing that, like, saves us from AI getting more powerful than we are, is if we interface with them in a way like that. But I'm kind of hoping that there will be less invasive things too, that maybe a brain surgery won't actually be necessary, that they'll just be able to, you can just like wear something probably on your head or something like that. um but it's already amazing though how non-invasive this Neuralink surgery is. Like, it's just done within a few hours, and the person is like home within a couple of days, 2 or 3 days or whatever, and they don't feel any discomfort. I think Brad, who I'm going to talk about today, Brad Smith, he could feel it at first, but it wasn't anything like bad. But he was aware that it was there, because he still has feeling in his entire body, as I understand it, like all the sensations and everything. But he just doesn't have movement anymore. He has ALS, um, which I think that's what. Ah, why is my mind going blank? The guy that was in Back to the Future, Michael J. Fox. I think that's what he has. Echo, does Michael J. Fox have ALS?
According to an Alexa Answers contributor, yes. Michael Andrew Fox, known professionally as Michael J. Fox, is a Canadian-American actor, comedian, author, film producer, and activist with a film and television career spanning from the 1970s. He publicly disclosed his Parkinson's diagnosis
Oh,
in
he has
1991 at the
Parkinson's.
age of 29.
Echo, what does ALS stand for?
I found two things that ALS can stand for. 1. Approach lighting system.
No.
2. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis.
Yes.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, I don't know how good you guys could hear my Alexa device, but anyway, it's a big name. But you all have probably heard of ALS, where you gradually lose all of your functioning. Um, and I'm sure different people go at different paces, or it happens. It probably it's different for individuals, like as far as how long it takes. But I think Brad said, because I've listened to several interviews now, and in one of them, I think it was like 2017 or 2018 when he basically had to decide whether or not to keep living, basically, because his vital functions, I think it was like his breathing, basically, he was no longer able to do that on his own. So he had the choice at that point whether to just be kept alive medically, or to um, just let nature take its course, basically. Which, if he had chosen that second alternative, he wouldn't have been with us um, anymore. And so I'm sure, looking back now, he is very glad that he chose this first alternative, which, I mean, he was already had made the choice. He and his wife, Tiffany, they decided back then that yes, he did want to keep living, so he had to have like machines breathe for him, or do everything for him, basically. And he because he doesn't have any movement. He can only move his eyes a little bit, and his mouth a very little bit. Like his wife says that sometimes he can just see the faintest um lip movement or whatever. That kind of, but that's all she had, basically, just things like that. And I'll get into more of that when I get into his story. But anyway, so yeah, like that's a whole nother topic I can get into, though, someday on my long list of topics. But I do have strong viewpoints that are probably more on the controversial side, about decisions like that we make. And um, we all just have different paths and should not be judged for our decisions, as far as like when to end our lives, and how, and how severe it has to be before we are allowed to make that decision, and stuff like that. I think that's an interesting topic to explore. But anyway, I just think it's remarkable that even in with his limited capability that he had back then, he still wanted to live and see his children grow up, and that he had such a supportive family and support network, and especially his wife, who has to be there constantly to care for him. Um, and like her sister recently got married, and or is going to very shortly. I forget which one, but anyway, she wanted her sister Tiffany, who is Brad Smith's wife, to be able to fly to her wedding in a day, and if she would have, but she couldn't, because she could not be away from Brad for even that minimal amount of time, like 12 hours or whatever. So yeah, she's never been able to leave his side, so it's just a huge commitment on both of their sides, and their faith is very strong. They are LDS, Latter Day Saints, and Noland, I forget what faith he is, but he also has a very strong faith. And so the podcast that I really want to draw your attention to, that I hope you will all Google and watch it, because it actually shows a lot of the how the technology now that he uses, it actually shows it in action in real time, where you can see him using this stuff. And I thought about showing a little of it here, but I would rather direct you to the video, so you can you can just see it all for yourself, because it would be hard for me to pick out just one. I want you to see the entire interview. Um, and that would be on Farzad's channel, Farzad. And I'm sure if you just Google Farzad ALS patient Neuralink or whatever, it would come right up, because he just recently did that video. So I would encourage you all to do that. But it's just amazing, though, even though for us it would still be seem like a very limited life, but compared to, like, Nolan is just loves the technology has done for him. He is the first patient, um, and he has quadriplegia, so he can still speak and everything, unlike Brad Smith, the ALS patient. But Nolan, he can just he's a big gamer, and this Neuralink technology has really helped him to be able to use his computer and stuff like that. But the main thing what it has done for Brad is given him his voice back, because he cannot talk, and so he's still like unable to move or whatever else. But just the fact that he's able to communicate is so much more, even though he had ways of communicating before Neuralink. I think they called it some kind of eye gazing device, which I'll talk about in more detail here in a minute. But um, just the fact of the communication alone being making such a big difference in his life and that of his wife, has just really opened up a lot of doors for them already. And so let's see. I was just trying to think of yeah, I'll just tell you a little bit about what I think is so amazing, how all of these technologies are converging, like the AI and the uh, LLMs and the Neuralink, how they're all coming together now. So if just one of them had been around, but not the other two, you would not have this technology because of how things converge. And I kind of referred to that at the beginning of this when I was putting on my glasses, and I said that I decided to become a YouTuber because of how technology was just converging. Because I wanted to talk about the new Glide device in my YouTube videos, which is why I named my channel Gliding Through Blindness. And at the same time, the glasses were going to make it so much easier for me to do that on camera, because of um, how I could just video right from the glasses. And so, in my case, that's an example of how technology has converged at just the right time. And for him, it has had an even more profound effect, um, because um, the AI is listening to what is being spoken to him, and then it is generating possible responses. So he is looking at the screen and reading these possible responses while um, listening to the conversation. So like it's just so like his brain is definitely still all there. And in fact, like he and Noland are like above average in intelligence. Like Noland is breaking all these records in the gamer world and stuff. And like and when I watched an interview of him, he was like playing a game while talking at the same time, like multitasking in a way that most people could not do to that degree at all. So there's nothing wrong with the intelligence. And like I said, Brad has to be looking at the screen because it's generating all these possible responses. Um, and then he can click on the one that best um, is showing how he would answer. And by clicking, of course, he isn't physically clicking, but this is where the Neuralink comes in because he um, uh, and there's also emoticons that are being displayed too, and like so if he chooses one of them, it the Neuralink or the AI will respond with the expression of the emoticon that he has picked, and it also responds in his own voice. So that's where another technology converged because they used 11 labs to actually get a sample of his voice. And then, so whatever answer he either clicks on or articulates himself, which I'll describe in a minute, it does that in his own voice, which is pretty cool because, of course, he can't use his voice anymore. But because they had recordings of him back in the day when he still was able to talk, he's able to use that now to communicate with people. And so he chooses the answer that he wants and then thinks about, at least this is how like Nolan described it, so I imagine it's similar for Brad too, but he thinks about moving his uh, hand or his finger like to point at the right object, um, because even though he no longer has any movement at all, bodily movement, he's all the synapses and stuff in his brain are still there. Like he can still visualize moving his finger or moving his arm or whatever it is, even though he actually can't anymore. But all the brain functioning is still there. Um, so he thinks about moving his mouse or his finger or whatever, and then that neuron or what is triggered and then goes to the Neuralink and goes to where he is thinking about clickings. And eventually, they're hoping that he can just focus on the thing itself, and that it will be able to that it will be able to instead of like yeah, doing all these steps, that they'll be able to shorten, like in that thoughts will just be faster. Like it's kind of a slow and tedious process right now, but I have to give kudos to Hans and Farzad too, as they interviewed him. They just did a really good job of editing and just conversing with him, even though it was a little bit awkward at times. But I'm sure they had very little experience with. I mean, I'm sure this was like a once in a. I mean, obviously was because this guy is the first to have this device, but they just adapted to it really well. Because sometimes like when he would answer, he would push the button before they were done talking and stuff. So there was a little bit of like interruption there. So then they had to like adapt to that or whatever. But it was just went really smoothly, and just I was just very impressed with the whole thing, and just with his Brad's attitude, and Tiffany, his wife. They talked to her a little bit at the end as well, and she talked. Well, yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself here. So, um, so, um, so in this way, he's able to have a conversation with someone, and in time, like I said, he'll just hopefully be able to think of what words he wants to say, and they'll be displayed on the screen. Um, so it wouldn't have to be like more of a generated response, but more spontaneous. Um, what he but that's still down the road quite a bit, and He has only had this implant for a few months. Um, he has 3 young children. I think the oldest one is like 8 or 11 or something like that. 3 boys, 2 or 3. Um, and um, so it's just amazing to think, though, of what will be. I mean, eventually, this Neuralink wants to be able to restore movement to people, like where they will be able to move again and stuff like that. But just what it's been able to do now is incredible. And So for this interview, like they gave him the questions in advance that they were going to ask him so that he could do more tailor-made responses and not just what the AI was generating in the moment. He could just, like, after they asked the question, he already kind of had his response thought out ahead of time. And that was a better, so like the interview is more efficient. Then he just clicked on that answer, but he also, I mean, it was a combination of the two. It was these thought out responses and then the more spontaneous responses too, so that he could interact with them in real time, um, as well. And click on these AI generated responses as well as the ones that were more that they had like kind of thought out in advance. Um, so, um, yeah, so he understands obviously everything that's going on around him, and um, before this eye gaze device, he had to just focus on certain things on the screen, and it wasn't nearly as efficient because um, it only works in a darker setting. Um, so he wasn't able to communicate when out and about, and that's why it's so hard for him to leave home. Well, one of the reasons, obviously, there's many, but um, the calibration of the eye gaze thing was also very easy to mess up. Like if one of his kids would just barely touch his wheelchair, or if they were sitting on his lap and they would accidentally move the pole of his the eye gaze thing, it would totally mess things up, and they'd have to like reboot it or whatever and start over. So um, this is much better, and um, so yeah, he was able to take a road trip recently to see family that he hasn't seen since 2019, and because of this Neuralink device that enabled them to do that, and because the Neuralink wasn't affected by bumps on the road and things like that as his eye gaze device would have been. And it's just incredible to think of what might be possible down the road. Like if he'll be able to connect to a humanoid robot that could do a lot of the movement for him and complete tasks for him and whatnot. Um, and so Yeah, I would obviously very much encourage you all to watch the video. And they also talked about the fact that Neuralink is just a work in progress. A lot of it is still so unknown, and a lot of it is still so tailor made to the individual. So it's just very hard to predict exactly when some of these breakthroughs might happen or what they might consist of. They just have to basically go day by day. So it's really admirable that these people are willing to like be one of the first people in this grand experiment to just see what all might be possible, because really what did they have to lose, and they had so much to gain, and it's just an exciting frontier that they're on with this. And the people that are in the Neuralink company. Or he couldn't say enough great things about them, how professional they are, and just how adaptable, and helping him to figure out like what might be possible. Um, and my computer's being my computer was freezing up. But anyway, yeah, he talks about how he was selected as to be the third Neuralink patient, and about the surgery and the whole process and everything, what they do, like from day to day, especially at first, when the Neuralink people were always at his house, working with him and stuff. They're not with him as much anymore, on a daily basis anyway. But anyway, he also talked about what a game changer the self-driving vehicles will be, especially when they get like self-driving vans and stuff like that. I mean, he can probably even go on trips by himself eventually if he had a humanoid robot with him and he had his own vehicle and all that. It's just kind of amazing to think about. And if he does spell words out letter by letter, it will guess, like, and predict the next letter, kind of like when we're typing something in a search bar or whatever, and it guesses what we're gonna say. And then it can generate like whole sentences to make it easier too. You just can predict the next word, which is kind of the whole premise of what LLMs do. And so, yeah, it's just really cool how, just to think about that Neuralink is the key for helping people with all these different disabilities, and allows for so much customizability. And the sky is basically the limit as far as the potential it will have eventually. Um, and I believe that Grok was also trained on his particular personality to make responses more authentic to how he would really have said things if he was still able to talk. And um, what his wife said too near the end of the interview was so powerful. Just that normally you think of ALS as like a disease of decline, like you're always going downhill and getting worse. But now with the Neuralink, there's actually reason for hope that things will get markedly better as the days go by. And so it's just a whole new way of looking at things for that family in a way that they never thought they'd be able to do. And like um, she was just saying that now he can be snarky again, like he used to be back in the day. And like she was always the quieter one and more shy than him, um, in the marriage. But then she had to be the more assertive and be the one to communicate for both of them. And she had to come up with most of the jokes, she said, even though he was usually the one to do that in their marriage before. But now that part of him is becoming more tangible again. And she also talks about how the Neuralink has changed their kids already too, even at their young ages. How the experience has just really made them like start looking forward to doing stuff with their dad again. And like just simple things like going out like to parks or whatever. And um, she hears them explaining the Neuralink to their friends and stuff like that. And it's just really opened their eyes up too to how amazing technology is and the different possibilities and potential that exist. Um, so with that, I'm gonna draw this to a close, and I hope you um, we should just all appreciate what we have and not take it for granted, and just be in awe of this technology and not find ways to really criticize it, but see the good in it. And please like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I always appreciate hearing your feedback, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye for now.